Sex is a biological aspect and is what parts people are born with and what they are classified at birth, and gender is more of a personal identity and a personal expression.
Sex is how you were born, and gender is the feelings that you associate each day between it.
Sex is your genitalia, gender is what you identify as.
What does it mean if someone identifies as asexual?
Asexual means that they don't feel sexual attraction towards another individual.
Don't have a sexual no, it means that they're not like sexually, I can't think of the word, like active or oriented, like they're neither bisexual, gay, straight, they're just gay.
When someone doesn't prefer sexual pleasure?
Asexual, to my understanding, is just being not attracted to one specific gender.
They don't get pleasure from certain sexual activities.
I think having non-gendered bathrooms just makes people more comfortable and creates a safer environment without having to classify people or having any kinds of issues or making anyone feel uncomfortable or unsafe.
So that people feel safe in a vulnerable area and can go in any restroom that anyone identifies as.
So people feel more comfortable and they're not like excluded.
Because it just prevents people from feeling uncomfortable.
That way, people don't feel discriminated against and they're able to pick whatever bathrooms they want.
Consent is free and willing, enthusiastic, unimpaired, free of manipulation. It's just you genuinely being in your right state of mind and wanting to engage in something with someone.
It's pretty difficult. We still have a lot of problems at Elon specifically because a lot of it gets swept under the rug. I mean, in today's age, girls find it really hard to speak out because the process is so difficult. Not a lot of people take it seriously, especially if it's like a masculine-dominated community.
Consent is verbal and physical acknowledgement that another person in a certain intimate situation is aware of the actions taking place and not only agrees, but is, how can I phrase it? Not only agrees, but is okay with them.
Consent means approval for any type of action.
I think that white privilege on Elon's campus means not having to worry about a lot of things. I think it means that there are a lot of things that we as white students take for granted and do not have to spend additional time worrying about.
I think white privilege means just not having to worry about a lot of things.
White privilege on Elon's campus, it's just being able to be given more opportunities because of your color of your skin, just because of the lack of diversity in particular, creates a lot of unequal balances, I'd say.
I think sexual empowerment is removing stigma or fears or anything else that limits one's sexual expression or confidence in their own sexual ability, and I think that that is something that you don't necessarily need to talk to others about to feel empowered because your sex life is your own and no one else's, but I think it means just being really comfortable with who you are and what you're attracted to and who you're attracted to and being yourself.
In today's age, we have a lot more sexual empowerment revolved around like feminism and just being proud of your gender and using that in your social interactions.
I define sexual empowerment as feeling free to express yourself physically and sexually and emotionally and not worrying what other people think about that.
Do you know what it means to be transgender?
Sort of. I believe it's, I think it's, I'm not exactly entirely sure. I think it's like you're a guy, but you want to be a girl, kind of. I think is what I know of it and what I was explained as a kid.
Right.
I think like I'm not sure the textbook definition of trans, but doesn't it mean like you've completed the process of transitioning from one sex to another? I think.
From what I know, I believe transgender to be
when someone's gender assigned at birth doesn't match their gender their gender as how they identify now.
My general understanding is like identifying or living as a gender that isn't what you were born with.
Like switching from the gender that you were born with.
That for toxic masculinity to really be changed, we need to have some type of program where it comes from the men, because if you look at history, men don't really like to listen to women. So a lot of the voices about toxic masculinity right now are women. So I think that first off, it's very important for mothers and fathers to think about that as they raise their children and as we begin to change society. But I think that men are going to have to talk to each other about their feelings and about masculinity and patriarchal society that we live in for things to really change.
Make other people honestly just a little bit more comfortable, maybe not having to act on or abide by certain gender norms, and a lot of what getting rid of that toxic masculinity is making people more comfortable to be themselves regardless of what society deems masculinity and maleness to be.
I think education is the first fold, making sure people recognize when masculinity is toxic, and then resources to no longer have toxic masculinity, and then holding folks accountable if they are engaging in toxic masculinity.
Do you think society views sending nudes as acceptable?
I think it's different for men and women. I think for men it's acceptable, and for women it's not acceptable, but I think it should be a personal decision.
Yes and no. I think our generation accepts it more than our parents' generation, because that's definitely a huge gap.
I think society in public views it as unacceptable, but in people's private lives, I think they view it as acceptable. People just won't own up to it.
I think certain groups in certain ages, but not as a whole. I think it's something people regret later on in life.
With the growth of the internet and the rapid development of technology and social media, I think sending nude images of oneself has become a little bit more normalized.
What do you think perpetuates rape culture?
Toxic masculinity, definitely.
Oh gosh, I think, at least in my experience with Elon, a lot of that toxic masculinity and a lot of people falling into gender norms. I think what we need to do as a society to eliminate the perpetuation of rape culture is to also eliminate what we conceive to be gender norms.
I think that a lot of times people don't come forward, or people don't take the situation as seriously as it should be.
I think a lot of times some people just don't take it seriously enough, and I think people just need to really understand everything that goes into it, and it ruins people's lives. It's horrible. If people could understand and relate more, I think there'd be a lot less of it.